Easy peasy Spanish. Learn to speak Spanish numbers. Lesson number 2. By Andres. Crossing Borders Language Center. Katy.
So today we're going to talk about numbers, and specifically we're going to try to identify some of the patterns that will help us remember the name for the numbers in Spanish. Muy bien. Primero, del 0 al 9. So this first 9 digits, first 10 digits, might be some of the most important because, as we will see later, they are going to be used again for other numbers, no? So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So as we talked about earlier with pronunciation, here we see some of the patterns that we talked about, some of the functions that we talked about certain letters. And again, these numbers are fairly different from its English equivalent, so it will be important for us to practice, to try to memorize the vocabulary here. Again, especially this set of numbers, because we will be reusing them for higher numbers, as we will see later on. Muy bien. Para practicar, vamos a hacer este ejercicio al 0 al 9. So let's try to recall some of the numbers that we just saw here as we go over this first few numbers, ¿no? Primero, 0. Tenemos 0, después 1, 1, siguiente es 2, 2, 3, 3. So here again we have another number that looks a little bit more like its English equivalent. So 3, 3. No, I think there is some similarity there that might help us remember the number here. Muy bien, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. So remembering that first C has an S sound, the second C has a K sound. It's important, ¿no?, for the pronunciation. 5, después 6, 6, 7. So 7 is 7. Siguiente es 8, 8. Y último es 9, 9. Muy bien, so let's try to memorize this initial numbers so that we can, as we will see right now, we will be reusing these numbers for in order to come up with the remaining numbers. Muy bien. So once we get into 10, so from 10 to 19, we start seeing patterns that will help us remember how to recall the names of this type of numbers, no? So we start with 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So from 11 to 15, we see that all of these numbers end with CE, no, and with that C sound. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then from 16 onward, we start seeing a different pattern, no? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. No, we don't see 20 here yet, but we see 16, 17, 18, 19. The one thing that I want to point out is how this is a compound word. No, we have a number like 16, 16. In theory, 16 equals 10 plus 6, no? And we see that reflected in the word itself, no? We have 10 y 6. So a direct translation of this will be 10 and 6, or 10 plus 6, uh, which is sort of transformed into a compound word with 16, no? So same thing with 17, 18, 19, no? That initial 10 is 10 and, so 10 and 6, 10 and 7, 10 and 8, 10 and 9. Muy bien. So it's important to recognize that pattern, to identify the pattern, because it will be, we will see it again when we start looking at 20s, 30s, 40s. But we already start seeing it here with 16, ¿no? 16, 17, 18, 19. Muy bien. Muy bien. So when we start looking at 20s, we see again the same pattern: 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. If anything, uh, the only thing that changes here is that we have 20 that ends with an E, and then we change that to 20 with an I. So we have that letter change. But after that is simply adding the previous numbers to what we already have, no? So 20, 21, which is 20 and 1, or 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24, 24. And it's something similar in English. You know, when we add, when we have these numbers, when we start counting, it's also combining two words, no? 21, 22, 23. Here we're doing the same thing, with the only difference that we included the word and, which is y in Spanish, to sort of put them together, not put the two numbers together. So again, we see 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So it's compound words, just like 16 with 16. They'll sort of put together into a new word that represents a different number. From 30 onward, we see a slight change with this pattern. So it's no longer a compound word, but rather it is you have the word separated, no? We have 30, 31, 32, 33, which I think will better help us remember, no? Once we already memorized numbers from 1 to 9, we can just recall those numbers and add it to the whatever tens place that we are working with. So now we have, for example, here 30, 31, 32, 33, and I added the 3 points because it's repetitive. No, we see the pattern, and we know that what follows will be 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. It's going to be the same thing for all numbers up until 100. Then we get into a different kind of pattern. Bien, so here are the tens place. Well, what we would have in English as 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Here we have it in Spanish, no? 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. So this will be important because this will be one part of our 2-digit numbers that we will be working with. The other one, of course, will be numbers 1 to 9, and just sort of adding them to our tens place. So just like in English, numbers from 20 to 99 follow a specific pattern, and that pattern is consistent. So once we familiarize ourselves with it, we will be able to sort of start giving out any number, any 2-digit number. And then again, just recalling what we mentioned here, that from 30 onward, we don't write the number as a combined word, as a compound word. Rather, we separate the words, and we have something like 31, 32. So here's an example now with number 28, we write it together, 28. Number 35, we separate the words into 35, but that's something that is going to mostly affect our writing, not so much how we speak, no, because the pronunciation is still similar, 28, 35, sort of having that E in between the two numbers to put them together. Muy bien. So here again we have two columns, one with the tens place, one with the single digit numbers, no? And the reason that we have these two columns is to try and show that the pattern that we just talked about, and to sort of show how it is consistent, in fact, because if we have a number, whatever number that we try to come up with, we just combine the two names here. For example, something like 57, you look at 50, you look at 7 being siete, so what we have is 57, no? So again, just put them together with the conjunction E. That's all we have to do, as long as we know what the names are for 30 to 90 and for 1 to 9. We can do that, no? We can just put them together. So again, something like 78 would be 78, no? 55, for example, 55, 55, 92, so 92, just 92, 67, which 67, 67. So I think once we identify the pattern, once we become familiar with the pattern, it becomes fairly easy to come up with the numbers that we see, no? The other thing that I wanted to point out is that especially when we look at the tens place, some of the names for those numbers are fairly similar. So 60 and 70, we only change one letter. And it's important to keep that in mind, because when we are pronouncing the number, it can be confusing if we don't sort of pronounce clearly whether it is 60 with an S or 70 with a T. But I think other than that, everything else would just be a matter of being able to remember, to recall the names that we have here, and being able to put them together based on the pattern that we have identified. No, after our last two-digit number, 99, which of course will be 99, we get into a different set of pattern. But this is not very different from English. So in English, we also have this type of patterns when we look at numbers like 67. We, of course, say the tens place and then say the single digit name, and sort of remain consistent with that pattern. And bien. So we can really use this for almost every two-digit number, at least from 16 onward, not from 16 onward, it becomes a very consistent pattern for two-digit numbers. Bien. But what happens after that? No, we have 100. We know 100 is 100. 101, 101, 102 will be 102. So again, like in English, we also see a similar pattern in where we repeat ciento as 100, and then we have the name of the single digit, 101, 101, 102, 102, 115, 115. But it is worth noting here that we do not have the conjunction E, no? Um, so 115, not 115. The conjunction will be whenever we separate a tens place with a single digit place. So 132, 239, por ejemplo. And also worth noting once we start getting into 200, 300, 400. So just like in English, we add that number at the beginning, no, before cientos. So 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. Um, and what I can do here is write them out so that you see that um, that is also a fairly consistent pattern. No, we have 100, 200, 300, 400. So it's all together, uh, with 500 being an exception in the sense that we don't use it as 500, but rather the word changes a little bit from the number that we would have probably guessed. 600, 700, 800. And then with 900, we have a slight spelling change. So instead of nueve, we pronounce it and we spell it out as nove, no 900. So 900 has that slight spelling change, and then 500, the word does change from cinco, but other than that, we see that we just add the number before the hundreds place, before the cientos, and we to change it, no? So 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, and all of that will come before we add or two-digit numbers, no, or tens and ones. Uh, so this will help us really come up with any number in the hundreds place. We will, for example, end the three-digit numbers with 999 or 999. And how will we write this? 999, no? Following the patterns that we have just covered. So 900 in the hundreds place, we add the nove before cientos to make it 900. And then we add 90 separated by E and finish the number with nueve, no? So this is a pattern that will repeat itself throughout the hundreds place. Muy bien. Muy bien. So what we have covered so far is mainly patterns, understanding what patterns will help us really come up with the numbers. But the most important thing will be to memorize those keywords. So especially numbers from 0 to 15. Because that's where we really don't see a pattern yet, but those will be sort of the building blocks that will be continued, where we will be using continuously to really come up with the with larger and higher numbers, no? Okay, so moving on to the thousands, los miles. We know that 1,000 is mil, just a three-letter word, and we know that this will come. We know that this will come before the hundreds, not just like in English. We can say something like 2,767. We need the order is important. The order is significant. So the thousands again, we will start the number with that. So 1777 will be the equivalent of 1777, and that's um, one thing that is different from English is that we cannot add uh, or it's not very common for us to add numbers as in 1777. We have two digit numbers, and we put them together to uh, talk about a number in the thousands place. Uh, that's not very common in Spanish. We wouldn't say 1777, but rather we will use the thousands and say 1777. Mm, Same thing again for 1814, 2000, 8758. Mm, and this perhaps will be more useful when we talk about years, no? When we talk about history, things that happened previous years, what is going on today. Año 2020, por ejemplo, we um, we will spell it and pronounce it something like this, no, 2020, knowing that we have the thousands place. There's no hundreds because it's not 2100 anything, but rather we move on to the next digit place, which in this case will be 20. Um, Next year, for example, or yes, next year would be 2021. Uh, so it's important mm, to understand sort of these patterns and their place, the order. Mm. Another thing to point out is that usually when we write out numbers in English, we would write a comma uh, here by the after the one in 1000. In Spanish, we write a period. So that's one thing that is different. But in regards to pronunciation and pronouncing these numbers, I think we covered sort of the main things. It's different, it's new, it's going to require a lot of practice, but I think there are this video is a good resource. There are other resources online that will help you practice and come up with and be able to identify and to familiarize yourself with the patterns necessary for you to come up with the names for different numbers, no? So going back to the numbers that we talked about at the beginning, which in my opinion are the most important numbers, again, because these are the ones that are going to help us come up with higher or larger numbers, and that is especially 1 to 9, no? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then again from 10 to 15 also, because there's really very little clues for us to really recall and remember what those numbers are. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. After that, once we have that ready, I think everything else is just remembering the patterns that we talked about. So 16, we know it's 10 and 6, 17, 10 and 7, 18, 10 and 8, and so on and so on. No, we know that that same pattern is going to be seen in the 20s, in the 30s, in all two-digit numbers. And then when we move on to the hundreds, is a similar thing. We still keep those patterns. We just add 100 or ciento before that complementing number, no? So 132, 132, 239, 239. And this is not different from English, no? And then with the thousands, we add the thousands before the hundreds. So we have something like 1777 for 1777. Bien, so I think once we have those patterns, once we know where to put which digit place in what order, we will be able to really talk about most numbers, no? And again, another reason why this number 0 to 9 might be the most important is because those are the ones that we use to talk about time, um, to talk about, for example, to give a phone number out. So I think in daily conversation, this might be the most commonly used numbers. But again, familiarizing yourselves with the patterns that we talked about is going to help us really be able to talk about any number, no, if it's necessary. Muy bien, I hope this video was helpful. I hope that it will really encourage you and help you to better understand numbers in Spanish. Muy bien, hasta luego.
Crossing Borders Language Center in Katy is the best language school. You can learn easy peasy English, Spanish, French, and Mandarin at affordable rates. Call 832-437-9864 today. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to Easy Peasy for more videos, and please share. We love you, Easy Peasy.